All right, here we go. Supposedly, everything's set up, set to right settings. So let's go in here, make sure everything's correct in here, mute myself once this pops up. Oh no, it did remember the settings. Their AI is getting smarter and more useful. I'm already muted. All right, so let's bring up everything we need, starting with Google Earth. Why is Google Earth not? Google Earth should be at the top of that. So this is going to be a short one. Not feeling the best. So I apologize for I apologize for that, and I apologize for not putting up as much stuff as usual over the last week or two. But like I said, I haven't been feeling the best, and I did have additional stuff I was going to post recently, but I accidentally deleted that video in kind of like a broad sweep action, and then kind of emptied the recycle bin. And then I only realized like a few minutes after that that, the video I just made was actually in that broad sweep that I just did. We need Twitter, unfortunately, is still a relevant thing. And we're going over here. And before we start officially, for those who are actually watching the beginning and not just skipping the first few minutes, uh, I have made, well, firstly, also, their friend was not aware of the Google Drive. There is the Google Drive. It's here linked in the posts, and it's in the description under every video that I've made since last summer. Where you can go and freely access, no paywall, freely access all kinds of different data sets that I maintain, graphs that I'm constantly updating, since so many sites are starting to put this stuff behind paywalls now. So you have everything from like natural gas production graphs, oil demand, oil consumption, electricity demand levels, population projections, everything. But also, since it's the most, uh, since it's basically the best Twitter alternative, I made a Blue Sky account where you can follow me if you want. And daily, once a day, I'll be posting like a graph with like some form of commentary about some specific fact related to something. So you can follow me there if you want. But anyways, check chat. Nothing from chat. All right, we're going to start very soon. I'm going to give people like 1 or 2 more minutes to show up, and then we'll talk about specifically India and Pakistan. So let me drink some water, throw in a few smaller items before that, and then we'll begin. And I'm going to try to keep this under half an hour. So what do we have? Hello, what do we have? All right, 27 minutes. All right, so while we give people a few more minutes, so while we give people a few more minutes, not a huge amount of Russia-Ukraine development stuff, recently at least. The front line has basically remained pretty frozen, although the balance of advances tipped back in Ukraine's favor. Russia's push has fizzled out now that they've run the last gambit of their old military stuff, and they're down to essentially just relying on doing cavalry charges with jeeps and with actual horses, as if this is the 1800s. You can find those videos. That is a reason you could actually be watching in 2025. So that is where that stands. Also, despite people's belief that the current U.S. administration was going to like completely undo the U.S. military apparatus's intended actions and was going to like 180 all decisions or something. That is not the case. I like I said, if they did it, which they are doing, they would do it quietly because they don't want to piss off their radical voter base back home. The current U.S. administration is still actually sending stuff to Ukraine, including F-16s, F-16 maintenance parts, missiles and munitions, along with Patriot systems and Patriot air defense missiles, and more stuff for HIMARS launches. The the only difference between the Biden and Trump administrations in this regard, not sorry to anyone who's a fan of either one, but the only real difference between them now is just that Trump is claiming publicly to his supporters that he's not doing so while he actually still is doing so. This was revealed in videos posted from both the US side and Ukrainian side of said shipments arriving in the last few weeks. And when the military expenditure list that got passed through Congress was published on US government sites, where they can safely publish it because effectively nobody reads those, or at least their voter base wouldn't read them. It listed out, all the stuff that was intended to be sent to Ukraine originally and is listed out there as still being spent on and still being sent. So that danger of that actually stopping turned out to not be true. And it is okay, that's just rain. Wanted to see what that noise was. And also, the one other thing before we do India and Pakistan is the Iran nuclear deadline was originally tomorrow, where the U.S. Gave Iran a deadline of tomorrow, May 11th, to completely give up its nuclear program and ambitions of getting nuclear weapons. Otherwise, it would face a massive airstrike campaign. However, the U.S. has now reversed that decision, apparently, and extended the deadline to, in quotation marks, an unspecified point in the future, which Israel is not exactly happy with and has said in the past that they're still going to launch an air campaign against Iran anyways at some point. And the current U.S. administration kind of confirmed publicly that even though they have taken this supposed stance where they've told Israel to not do that, if Israel does it, then the U.S. is still just going to join in on the attack anyways, which is a surprise to no one. That was kind of inevitable. So, no idea what an actual timeline for this playing out might be. We'll have to wait and see with that. I would prefer if when people set like deadlines for big things, follow up on that, and that's the big thing. And are we still stuttering? No, we're back to being smooth. Okay. All right, let me take one more sip of water. Then we're going to run down all of this that I have missed out on updating on for the past 2 weeks. One sip. Okay. So, actually, probably better to pull up a image since everything, the borderlines kind of get blurred in since they're white on Google Earth. They get blurred in with the snow in the Himalayas. So, this is the Kashmir region. although the exact like specifications of what defines it will be different on each map. But it is split between India and Pakistan. Both claim the entire region, obviously. That's why it's, in a yellow disputed color, but both control different regions of it. And that line of control has varied over the course of time based on different wars that the two have had. And publicly, the reason that the Indian government is stating for the current conflict is for a terrorist attack that happened in the Kashmir region, which India blames on Pakistan. However, that's not really to anyone with like a thinking brain. That's not, you don't do this over one terror attack with a death toll of 25. Even the whole U.S. Afghanistan thing was 9/11 was a good it was a good happenstance excuse, but it wasn't really like majority about that. So what's going on between India and Pakistan is I'm gonna have to get a different color since you won't see the yellow there. Where's the colors? These? No. Oh, there we go. Okay. So what's going on with India and Pakistan in reality, and I've talked about this on the channel before, that this war was going to be inevitable. Whether what has happened over the last 2 weeks actually carries on into a full war and becomes the war I was expecting, or whether they call it off and we only end up getting it several years from now in the original time frame I thought it was going to happen. Whether which one of those is irrelevant. Sorry, I'm so congested. The issue in full reality is the the Indus River flows down. This is not the actual course. I'm just drawing random lines. The Indus River flows down out of the Himalayas, like most of the rivers in the region do, and it flows through the Kashmir region included. And under the Current Water Treaty, India is supposed to just let that water flow into Pakistan. It's not supposed to dam anything along the Indus River or its primary tributaries that add on to it while it's still in India. It's supposed to just let that go into Pakistan since that's Pakistan's basically only real source of water. However, India had already stated before any of this started that it had no intention of actually renewing the treaty, which was supposed to come up for like renewal and renegotiation or something next year. They'd already stated a few weeks ago, before any of this happened, that they were kind of done with this. And the reason for that is India has an issue of depleting groundwater, and its groundwater aquifers will begin hitting dry points around 2040 or in the early 2040s and continue depleting after that to the point where they can no longer supply the roughly 20% of India's water that they currently do, especially its agricultural water. And in the absence of 20% of its agricultural water, India's agricultural capacity would collapse by 20%, obviously, which would take it from 1.5 billion people being able to be fed, which is why India's still a net exporter, since its population is only 1.4 billion, but its total food capacity is 1.5. 20% off that would drop it down to 1.2. And this would be, excuse me, I switched back to the mouse. There we go. Uh, actually, hold on, let's delete that. This would be during a time when India's population will be, up around or above 1.5 billion. So that will be between 300 and 400 million people's worth of missing food capacity, which the global market at large can, handle a gradual addition from increasing population globally, and it can handle, uh, there's wiggle room for like suddenly adding a few dozen million people. When you suddenly go up by a few hundred million, that kind of hits like an RKO out of nowhere. And there's not exactly wiggle room for that. And also, India just wouldn't want that anyways because they're they've been used to their entire existence being food independent, and suddenly having to rely on food imports for a huge amount of your population, that would be considered a matter of national security, which I mean it is. So India has a few options. We go back out to Google Earth, switch back over to yellow. So India has a few options. It can either do a redirect project for the Brahmaputra River. Oops, sorry, no. Brahmaputra goes like this, comes over and then down through Bangladesh. It can redirect through some massive infrastructure projects, the Brahmaputra River over into the main portion of India and utilize a bunch of that water to fill in the gaps once its groundwater starts really depleting. And that would cause issues with China because China has been putting all kinds of dams along the river in its territory and is currently building a bunch of water diversion infrastructure to start moving that water away and up into the northern portion of China, because China, in the northern portion at least, is also depleting its groundwater really fast and is going to run into the same problem as India. Actually, roughly around the same time frame, ironically or unironically. So, uh, to fix that problem, India would kind of have to get into a conflict with China, or India could do a similar redirection, but from the Indus River instead, and that would result in a war with Pakistan. However, of the two, Pakistan is kind of the obviously weaker opponent if you're choosing between Pakistan or China. So India's kind of made it pretty clear that they're choosing the fight with Pakistan if they're going to have to pick one of the two. And that is where the Kashmir borders come in as well. So, in whatever conflict, whether they do just go for this now, whether they use this opportunity that popped up, or they decide to call it off and still wait, India is going to want to push its control line further towards. I mean, politically, they already claim that this is theirs anyway, but they're going to want to push that land control further so that they have control over more and more of the upper portions of the Indus River, so that they have a larger and larger volume to divert water from to begin with. And so this came up once all this started. Before all this started, India had already been moving a bunch of construction equipment and materials up here and had begun constructing dams and the obvious beginnings of some kind of water diversion infrastructure. And then this happened, and now we're starting to see them go at it again. This began, it began a few days ago when India launched some airstrikes into northern Pakistan. I don't know the exact locations of the bases, so don't like quote me on stuff. I'm just putting X's at random spots. India launched a wave of airstrikes into northern Pakistan, and they hit a number of ground positions, along with an air base near Islamabad, where they hit one of Pakistan's. troop and or cargo transport aircraft on the ground, a C-130 they have. And then following that, there was an actual uh, brief aerial engagement, not of the scale that either of these two are claiming. Okay, so both of these two claim ridiculous stuff. Do not actually listen to their like media channels. They were claiming this absurd BS of like there was this epic, Independence Day movie style battle of like hundreds of fighter jets facing off against each other. There was no such thing. There were multiple fighter jets involved up here where things were happening, but there was no gargantuan Independence Day style air battle. There were a few engagements, and there was a aircraft shot down on each side, and there were two additional aircraft that crashed in India because of most likely EW or electronic warfare or signal jamming, instrument jamming. Since remember this is the Himalayas, so this is high terrain with mountains that are almost 6 miles high, and in the different valleys and stuff, that's huge elevation differences where they're rising and falling like walls essentially. So when you get signal jamming and you're jamming the signals and instruments of planes flying around in a place like that, you're going to get results of them like crashing into mountains, or thinking or skidding the ground, scraping the ground and sort of rolling and disintegrating, because they think they're in a part where the ground is lower than it actually is. And this kind of thing can happen anywhere. This also happens during the first Gulf War in Iraq. Signal jamming or instrument jamming, even over perfectly flat desert terrain. Signal jamming also caused several aircraft in Iraq to crash. So that's not a new thing, although everyone at the moment has, because of the Ukraine war, has been treating EW stuff like it's new. It's not really that new. It's better now. There's more effective things to be used, a lot of which that Pakistan was using were very quickly flown into Pakistan from Turkey before this engagement. But then, uh, since then, both sides have been launching, not nightly, but like every other night, they've been launching drone swarm waves, similar to what Russia and Ukraine are doing back and forth with Shahed drones and Beaver drones. I don't know the names of Pakistan's and India's drones off the top of my head, so forgive me. I'm familiar with Ukraine's and Russia's drones because that's been going on for a while, and I've been paying attention to that from the beginning. If this turns out to be if this is like fully legit happening, then this will be going on for quite a bit, and I'll end up remembering those eventually. And then, over the past week or so, they both have been seen moving ground forces into the Kashmir region towards where the contested line of control is. So they both are clearly expecting to actually go at each other at some point in the very near future. Although there was supposedly a ceasefire that was agreed to recently, it was violated, and you know we've all seen over the last few years that ceasefires are effectively not real things anymore, anyways. So I put absolutely zero stock in any ceasefire signed or agreed to by anyone. No one's actually going to follow those. We've left that point well behind us, and now most recently, oh, here it is. It's the top thing. See, is this as big as it gets? Oh no, it gets bigger. So these are all the points over the last couple days where they have begun engaging each other, and up in the northern portion, especially within Kashmir, they have begun actually cross border shelling each other with artillery, and none of it's been none of it's been like concentrated or really heavy. So none of it's been like focused on anything or preempting any potential like upcoming maneuvers. Uh, it's mainly been like individual smaller units doing doing stuff throughout scattered positions. Granted, they're obviously getting those fire orders from someone, but it hasn't been like a concentrated thing ahead of any kind of like major force assembly. The force assembly is still underway. They're both still moving personnel and vehicles up into the area. So they did not like they did not preemptively position invasion forces or counter invasion forces. That takes a few weeks or a few months depending on your logistical capabilities. So it would be, a little bit before either of them did anything like really on the ground, unless one of them just kind of throws strategy out the window and goes crazy. But they are already kind of at face value random, shelling each other across the border with artillery and launching drone swarms. And also, India has, like I said, conducted actual airstrikes with aircraft into Pakistan. Pakistan, I believe, did launch some standoff munitions, some at distance, either glide bombs or cruise missiles from aircraft from right along the border. But India kind of has a lot more money, so has a bigger military budget, and thus has denser air defense. So they didn't exactly want to actually cross into Indian airspace directly. And most of those standoff munitions were taken care of, although a number of them did hit. For the most part, honestly, kind of random buildings, except for one airbase up in India's Kashmir region, where the runway got damaged with a few things. All right, hold on a second. And part of that random building thing uh, is also sort of attributable now to modern electronic warfare, since a lot of stuff is like kind of GPS guided in present day. So the EW is sort of screwing with that. And so stuff ends up hitting random buildings close to where it was intending to target, but not actually hitting the targets. So a future development you might see from this is militaries, especially like air forces and navies with cruise missiles and everything, might actually find themselves forced to switch back to, sort of, I guess, a more analog or mechanical internal guidance of just the missile or the bomb uh, starting off with the thing programmed into it of how far it will need to go at what speeds and what air pressures it will sense in order to reach its intended target. No actual like electronic signal connection to a satellite or GPS system or anything. Just sort of a internal, I guess, maybe even analog analog like clock system, basically telling it, all right, you've been falling at this angle for this long, so the target must be, 30 meters underneath you by now, time to explode. That is that is legitimately a thing that might actually end up happening is because of how effective modern jamming and electronic warfare is. We might actually have to revert some guidance systems to stuff that's not as susceptible. All right, I've been going for quite a while. Uh, Geiger counter joke. Yeah, that is a thing. So there are. I've said before there are two real actual chances where someone might use nukes in the world. Because everybody, for some reason, I wouldn't think people watching my channel would actually be dumb enough to actually like believe Moscow. But Russia's not using nukes, no matter how many times for the smallest of infractions, like long before the Ukraine war started, long before 2014 even, when people left like trade deals with them, they would threaten to use nukes. Russia's not using nukes. China's not using nukes. Uh, the most, the actual most likely, place where you would see nukes used, like real chance, is by Israel if they had another like surround sound invasion scenario. If that thing the Islamic world keeps threatening to do and threatened to do in response to Gaza, and then in response to Lebanon, then in response to Syria, but never actually manifested. If they actually had a, Islamic world Zerg rush attack on Israel, and Israel was surrounded and actually being pushed into, not just surrounded and fighting, but like was actually being pushed back inside of itself by some significant degree, Israel absolutely would use nukes. Uh, they would use their Schrodinger's nukes because publicly they still state, as a matter of policy, that they don't have nukes, even though they also state publicly that they absolutely would use the nukes that they don't have. They do have them, but they still publicly insist that they don't have them, even though they also have a publicly visible nuclear doctrine strategy. This now might legitimately be like the one other place where I'd put a maybe on it. Because if India like goes full in and like tries seizing the entire rest of the Kashmir region, and I really doubt they do anything beyond that because they don't really claim anything beyond that, and their main thing again is the Indus River. But still, if they do go through with it as I'm expecting, again, whether they turn the current uh, slight crank up in animosity into the actual conflict early, like several years before I thought they were going to do it. If they are going through with the Indus River water diversion thing, Pakistan might do it, maybe. I mean, it would depend on how much Islamabad is convinced, or rather, it would depend on the amount of water India intends, or that Islamabad believes that India intends to divert from the Indus River. Which, I mean, to supplement the amount that they're going to lose from their groundwater, it would have to be a lot. Uh, and, it's going to come down to in how much Islamabad believes India is going to end up diverting from the Indus River. If they are convinced that India is going to divert like whatever water volume threshold Islamabad sets as too much, then yeah, they might actually do it. They don't have that many nukes, and they don't have very big nukes, but so they're not even really uh, how much? Yeah, most of theirs are less than like 100 kilotons. So those would only really be like effective at destroying small air bases or small military bases, or small like I don't know, force concentrations of like, an armored division on the border or something. They they don't really have strategic level stuff. So, but they do have stuff they could use, and I mean, I can't really tell off the top of my head whether India would. I mean, they need the water anyways, so they really can't back away. But I don't know like what they would decide their pain threshold would be, whether they're okay with letting Pakistan launch a few since they're small anyways, and then just calling a bluff after that and seeing if Pakistan does anything else. Whether they would secretly, the government wouldn't tell its citizens this, obviously, whether they'd secretly be okay with, millions of people dying if Pakistan actually like threw everything they had at them because they still need the water anyways, and losing 10 or 20 million people would kind of help in the whole eventual future agricultural needs issue. Plus, also, India has air defense stuff for both cruise missiles and ballistic missiles anyway. So, however many Pakistan did decide to try to use, not all of them would get through in the first place. In the end, if Pakistan is actually serious, they've said they would use nukes and have obviously insisted they are serious. If they are, in the end, India kind of just still has to go for it because there's only the two options. There's the Indus River to divert water from, or there's the Brahmaputra River to divert water from, and you that then lets you take your pick: war with China or war with Pakistan. One of these two is a lot weaker than the other, obviously, but the same one who's a lot weaker than the other is a lot more likely to use nukes, since the Indus River is basically Pakistan's. It's their it's effectively their only water source. It's 90+%. Whereas China has other water sources, and in the end, could in a losing position, uh, like Beijing could just justify to itself waiting out their population decline, since once their population declines to a certain point, and theirs is going to be declining a lot more rapidly than India's, then their agricultural constraints will then eventually at some point not be an issue, whereas India's will continuously be an issue for quite a while, as their population decline is not going to be anywhere near the rapid collapse that China's is. So China could back out and kind of justify things to itself, whereas Pakistan has effectively no other options. The Indus River is the only thing they have, and thus there is definitely a decent pile of credibility on the scales there of whether they would actually use nukes in relation to all this. That will also depend, obviously, on whether the current happenings event actually like turn into the war again ahead of time, I was not expecting this to start until the 2030s, until at least 5 years from now, because by then India would like be fully in progress of constructing like at least the beginning majority of river like water diversion projects up in that area, so that they can have stuff ready by 2040 to start sending the water south to their agricultural lands. So that was more around when I originally thought this would happen. But like I said before, there's a chance they just do it now. They've and they might partly be sort of testing things at the moment, with like the different strikes on Pakistan and you know sort of goading Pakistan into trying to strike them as well. They might at the very least be testing an engagement right now to see where the two of them kind of stand at the moment, since the last time they actually fought each other was decades ago, and so they they might be doing a test of capability and confidence, and that probably would also weigh in on whether they decide to go for things now and try to, like I said, do that push for a greater control of Kashmir, pushing things like further in so that they have more control over the upper portion of the river, more volume to divert from when they actually start doing stuff. So it's been so the engagements that have happened, that I listed off are what has occurred so far. It's targeted but sporadic, and they again supposedly there was a proposed ceasefire last night that is not actually being followed because no one follows those. This isn't that age anymore. Apparently, uh, no, they're not followed here. They're not. They're certainly not followed in the Middle East. They're not followed in the various African civil wars. So kind of pipe dreaming if you somehow thought you know India and Pakistan were going to magically abide by a ceasefire, when literally no one else is actually doing those anymore. So that's where it currently stands, waiting to see if they decide to commit to it now and just go for it, or whether they're gonna do a confidence and capability test, but then pull back and wait for the original time frame. And also, we'll be watching since we're getting closer and closer. We're about to hit summer. We'll be watching to see if we observe beginning of movements and force assembly buildup along China's southeastern coast, as months of that would be required, weeks at minimum, before actually attempting anything. The time frame of attempting things again for China and Taiwan has to be in the fall or autumn of whatever year they choose to do it, because that's when the waters in the Taiwan Strait are the calmest, and thus the crossing from China to the Taiwan Strait would be the shortest. But China has been, like I said a few streams ago, they've been cranking out high speed, those high speed small transport barges, and the big ones, the mass force landing deployment barges, on top of the not all that big or impressive, but still managed to get them assembled in time to amphibious, actual military vehicle amphibious assault fleets. So, but any of the preemptive force assembly ahead of time would have to start sometime in the summer. So we're almost in summer now. So we're getting towards the point where we would start seeing the beginning of that. But if we go through the summer and see no such thing, like the practice runs that they did in 2021, 22, and 23, if we see no such thing, None of the massive like train shipments or roads being blocked off and clogged up with tanks and AFVs and everything moving through them, like we saw during those practice runs a few years ago. If we see no such thing and no movement of all those rapid transport barges down to ports along the Fujian coast, if we see no such thing throughout the summer, then they're waiting for next year. This would be like the best year to do it, though, out of like the varying factors, like how well armed with modern stuff Taiwan is, most of which is us dumping stuff off on them, versus how prepared China is navally, uh, combined with obviously its younger demographic or its military age demographic decline. 2025 is like where the different points kind of meet up. So this would math wise be the best year for them to pick, but there does seem to be some visible chance that they're going to wait for next year, but that will have to see through summer to be determined. Plus, Taiwan's enhancement has been going faster than we initially publicized, uh, and then it initially appeared as well because we said XYZ was going to happen. That ended up happening faster. We started getting them Abrams tanks, HIMARS launchers, Avenger air systems. We started giving them all those things faster than we initially said. And now the speed of those deliveries has picked up yet again to even earlier than was initially expected, including originally we were going to start giving them the uh, most modernized version of the F-16s with all the like latest radar systems and equipment and munitions. We were originally going to start giving them those in 2028. Then we moved that down to 2026 when in 2022. And then 2 months ago, I think it was, the first like four of them already showed up in Taiwan. So we have actually been pumping them with stuff ahead of the schedule that we publicly made visible. So wait through the summer. We'll see if that shoreline force assembly happens. If not, then they're waiting for next year. And we'll continue watching this, obviously, to see if India decides it's going to actually commit, or if Pakistan decides that Uno reverse card, it wants to commit instead and do like something preemptively and try to like strike, I don't know, try to strike and bomb the dams and infrastructure that India has already been constructing along, begun constructing along the Indus River, as that's obviously a very plausible action that's a very plausible action that they could try before the nuke stuff is just try bombing the dams and bombing the infrastructure, see if they can get through, if they can manage that. And I've now run past the amount of time I was supposed to be doing. Ah, so, yeah, I'm 20 minutes over time. So I'm going to uh, have to drop out here. Wow, I was not paying attention to chat. Blah, 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 blah. All right. That's getting pretty close to spam, but I'm going to let you off on that because I'm too tired to actually care at the moment. There's nothing else that was happening anywhere else that I think I wanted to go over. I don't even think I'm forgetting anything this time. Yeah, there was nothing else major going on anywhere, at least at the moment. So that's going to be it for this one, since I need to eat and try potentially re-recording the videos that I said I had recorded and was going to upload, but then accidentally deleted. I'm going to have to try to do those over again. Ugh, that's going to be a pain, but I'll see you guys around next time. And the OPEC oil production levels video, and the oil demand levels video should be this week. OPEC should be this week. Oil demand will probably not be till next week, I think. But anyways, I'll see you guys. That's going to be it for this.